You need truth and life. Here is the Brother Leon Show. You better recognize.
What's going on, listeners? This is your boy, Brother Leon, and I am back again. I'm actually sitting out here on a work truck. The type of work that I do when I'm not doing the podcast and when I'm not doing ministry, I'm actually out here on the front line doing frontline work. So I'm actually sitting on my truck getting ready to do this podcast. So I want you guys to understand and know that, man, Brother Leon, he is definitely out here in the struggle. Not only out in the streets, but also out here at work. So I have the opportunity to have a little break to come before you just for a moment. I want to read a scripture, but today I want to talk about black privilege. And the one thing about black privilege is the type of privilege that a black person can attain and rise to. Sometimes you're born into it. Sometimes you can get to a certain level that you have it. And the one thing about privilege that you have to also understand is that privilege affords you empowerment to get your group or get other people above the scratch line. The purpose of privilege is to use it to empower people, to open up doors to those that normally doors would not be open for them. So that's why at times God uses us, or he blesses us to a place where not only our privilege affords us certain comfortabilities, but it also gives us a responsibility as well. And I believe, in my personal opinion, that when you have privilege, you use that privilege to help those who are less fortunate than you. And that is bringing people or bringing your community above the scratch line, also empowering those people and building those people up. But the one thing that I have seen in society is that sometimes we use our privilege to demean people, to destroy people. Instead of building up, we tear down. And sometimes that privilege can be weaponized looking at society and its history. So go back and look at the video of the woman in New York when she called the police on a black man and lied on him, saying that he was assaulting her and her dog. And this black man, he videotaped the whole experience. Luckily, he had the videotape. Because if you look at the history of black men and police in New York, and also the situations of black men, white women in New York, if you look at the Central Park Five, or the Exonerated Five as they are called now, you look at the history, and the history has not been good. So, this woman, she weaponizes her privilege because she feels as though that she has been inconvened. And who are you to tell me what to do? Don't videotape me. I do whatever I want. And so sometimes even with privilege, you have to watch yourself, because sometimes that privilege that you are born into, that you're born with at times, can make you arrogant. It can get you to a place where you feel like, well, look, I know what I have, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it to my ability. And some people know it. Some people know that there's white privilege out here, and they use it to their ability. And so some people, even with black privilege, know what that is, and they use it to their ability. But what I want to talk about tonight is when you don't use the privilege that God has given you to build up, but you use it to destroy. And so, we're going to talk about wealthy blacks. We're going to talk about educated black people. We're going to talk about people who are in the political spectrum. And I'm going to take this out of scripture, because you have to look at the fact that at times, man, sometimes we can get to a place where we allow our privilege to disconnect us from the people that we are trying to help. I'm serious. I love Booker T. Washington. I love W.E.B. Du Bois. But at times, man, some of their writings, I'm like, dude, really? I'm starting to look at you like suspect, really. But I get the fact. I get the fact that people are saying, black people are saying that, hey, we need to stop killing each other. But the one thing that you don't say is that crime is about proximity. And that whole myth and the thing that they put on us is black on black crime. That is a tool used by white supremacists to talk and keep us in bondage while taking the pressure, responsibility, and accountability from them to change. Because you're putting it all on black people, and you give the notion of black people are broken, black people are sick. I remember that saying, man, they used to have way back in the day, sick man of Asia, but the Asian people turned that shit around. You're not just going to diss us like that. And that was, Chinese and Japanese, but yet Asian, sick man of Asia. And when you look at it, it's almost like you hear black on black crime. If the black people would just do this, if the black people would just stop aborting their babies. And then you have the notion to want to say that they're lazy, they're always looking for a handout. And the crazy part about it is that you forget the fact of the trauma and the 400 plus years of slavery, years of Jim Crow, and then you have the nerve to say that they are lazy and that they're looking for a handout when you put them to work for free. At this point right now, you have benefited over 200 years worth of free labor. You have used it to invest, you have developed a surplus, and yet you use people still. You give them a little bit of money, you give them a little bit of fame, you give them a little bit of acceptance, and then you take it and you create a person that is assimilated. Because you've given them that acceptance, and that acceptance has opened up the door to make them think that they are just like the society that has welcomed them. And a lot of times, no, they're not. You're never going to be like them. And that's just being honest. So they can give you all types of jobs, but at the end of the day, if they're using you as a tool to tear down the black community, you have to ask yourself, what am I here for? Am I doing the bidding of a modern slave master? Am I the modern day plantation preacher? Am I the modern day bed wench? Am I the modern day Sambo? And yeah, I'm going to say some derogatory things. Because at the end of the day, these same people at times are the same people who do not want you to speak out against injustice, and they just want you to do your job. You see this when there's protests against NFL athletes, NBA athletes, NASCAR athletes. It's a shame that dude, he had a noose in his garage. It's a shame that, about LeBron James, he was just told, shut up and dribble. It's a shame that Colin Kaepernick got blackballed, and he was touted as saying his kneeling is a disrespect against the flag. But when you look at the murder of George Floyd, he was protesting to stop that type of violence, but people twisted it and also used black people as well, who are wealthy, who were athletes, to come against our black brother. And you know who you are. And the crazy part about it is that is what I want to hone in on. Is that you have blacks who have been given levels of access, who have attained levels of achievement, who have attained levels of education, who have attained levels of prosperity, and instead of them using it to uplift the black community, they use it to tear down. And they also use it to protect white fragility. So you'll have a wealthy black that'll sit in a conversation on race relations, and then some idiotic thing comes out of a white person's mouth, and they will sit there and not say anything, and then maybe the next day or a few hours later get on there and say, hey, I was totally shocked, I was against it. But yet when you had the time to respond, you did not do anything. And a lot of times it's about the fear of losing financial backing, because when you really look at it, even in the rap game, even if you look at some of these rappers, most of their fans are white. So for them to take it and call out stuff, you are taking a risk on losing a financial base, because if you speak out and you speak your truth, and then some of these kids' parents go back and see your remarks, they will not finance their children's tickets, which is your ticket sales. So that means I have to stay quiet, because it limits me. It will limit the money that I receive. It would also, put me in a place where I won't be able to go to certain venues. I won't be able to have certain relationships, because I have taken a stand first. The one thing that I love about LL Cool J is that he has taken a stand, and he straight up said, I'm a black man first before anything. And I love that. And the fact that he's using his platform, to try to promote, and that he's using his platform to uplift, and that he's also using his platform to inform. And so you got to also understand, man, that at this day and age, it can't be you're on the side of silence, especially if you're a black person or person of color. You cannot be on the side of silence. And the reason why I say this is because silence adds to the hurt. Silence adds to the pain. And if silence is adding to the hurt, if silence is adding to the pain, it's almost like you are with it. So I'm here to say right now, black people, wake up. Racism is a team sport. I said it before. Racism is a team sport, and don't be surprised who is on the other side. That's why, man, you can see the most ignorant, wealthy, educated black people on the side of white supremacy, white privilege, and white fragility, protecting it, running defense for it, catching a ball, because they are not for the black community. Their black privilege has got them to the place where they have the image of black, but they have a white mind, a white supremacist mind, a mind that says that black people are broken and they come from black people, a mind that says that all black people want is a handout, and they have gotten hands out. They have stood on the shoulders of black people's achievements. And at the end of the day, this is what they do. Instead of helping, they hinder. And instead of opening the door, they put a stumbling block in the way to trip up people. And then want to say that some of these things is happening in the black community, like racism, police violence, killings, shootings, and murderers, are nothing but a myth. And that if black people will work on their own shit, then they wouldn't notice everything else. If they will be educated, if they will be this, if they will be that. We have gotten that bullshit for I don't know how long. We are educated. We are in the military. We are in church. Some of us are in the house before 10 o'clock. Some of us live a moral life. Some of us have followed the rules. And yet, still victims of racist police and victims of racism because of how you see us. I told you earlier that at times, sometimes in the atmosphere, you get so used to the dysfunction that you learn how to operate in it, and it's normal to you. But yet it is dysfunction. And we have got to get to the place as black people that we have to unify, that we have to come together, that we have to pull our monies together, our resources together, our worship together. And I meant what I said about coming out from among pastoral white leadership. Because if they are not going to speak up against the injustice that is going on in your community, how can they represent you? Because you are giving your money into the white community that's going to circulate 31 times before it goes out. And yet you have some of these churches that have black people, people of color in them, and they are okay with the communities in which they live. They're okay with the food deserts. They will save your soul, but not want to save your body, and not want to even talk about legislation that will help promote your welfare and well-being. So this is why I say come out from amongst them, because you're seeing the handwriting on the wall. When you have these dialogues with megachurch white pastors, and I'm not saying all of them, but when you hear certain truths and when you see certain patterns, they don't give a damn about your ties. They want it, but they don't give a damn about your voice. And you better see where your money is going. If your money is going to Israel, man, take that piece out. You need to help your community first. Somebody needs to stand for you. And I love the Israel people, but man, please, they've been getting money. They've been getting help. But they raping the shit out of Africa. And that's every country. Getting its resources, getting its gold, getting its diamonds. Why do you think China is there? Because they are looking to make investment. Everybody sucks off the tit of Africa, but yet want to diss Africa. Even our own president calls it a shithole country. Yeah, it's going to be some explicit language tonight, because I'm getting sick and tired of seeing black people, eloquent black people, educated black people, prosperous black people, tear down the black community and even support systems and people that tear down the black community. And the crazy part about it is that some of these people will throw you a bone and you think it's a feast, and then they give it to the black person that is assimilated, that works for them, to tell them to say, you need to be grateful because a black person never gave you this, a white man's giving you this. And I'm talking about President Trump opening up the prisons. President Obama never did it. That's what they say. But yet at the end of the day, if you look at policy, if you look at the judges who are being appointed, and I'm like, yo, so you saying all these people out of jail can get rid of the systemic racism and the police violence that black people and people of color have seen? I don't think so. And I know some of them are grateful, and some of them are to the place where, hey, I'm going to be down because, you know, they did this for me. The Republican Party did this for me. The Democrats didn't do this for me. I get it. I totally get it. Totally get it. But at the end of the day, I'm like, man, I'm not going to sell out. I'm not going to sell out. I'm not going to sell out. Seriously, and that's my radio you heard in the background. So forgive me for that. Oh my God, I wish I could edit it out, but I can't. So you got to also understand and know, man, that this is where we are. And you got to wake up and see, man, I don't care who it is. And the crazy part about it is that not only is it black people that attack us, but we give the notion and allow, man, that prejudice of colorism to come in and destroy us and divide us. You know, because I don't look a certain way or I'm not a certain shade, then you can't trust me. Or you know, they're more acceptable, put them up front and put the dark-skinned people in the back. I used to hate that mess when I saw it in videos. Because there was always up front, you had the nice light-skinned girl up front, and then you always had the dark-skinned girl shaking her booty in the back, or she was always good for a butt shot. I hated that shit. But I saw it for what it was. And if you look at the magazines, look, man, For a minute there, they wanted everybody to look like Tyra Banks. Everybody can't look like Tyra Banks. I know Tyra Banks might be the top model, but I'm like, man, come on. She ain't the only black woman in the world. I mean, man, we got variety with us. I'm like, man, yo, come on, man. Give me some Regina King. Give me some Angela Bassett. And then now, the whole flavor scheme has changed. And now, it done switched from light skin to dark skin now. But yet, the crazy part about all of this is that you still got Serena Williams being attacked, Venus Williams being attacked. And yet they say all types of stuff, don't say nothing about these other tennis players. And yet we are attacked, and sometimes even by our own. And we got to wake up, man. Wake up and know that there are assimilated people among you. They are assimilated just like the Borg from Star Trek. And they're on the side of white supremacy. I'm serious. They can be preachers. They can be whoever. Because they have gotten to a level and now they're disconnected. And some of them, some of that disconnection comes from upbringing. Some of that disconnection comes from education. Some of that disconnection comes from the fact that I struggle. And if I could do it, anybody can do it. And sometimes everybody can't do it. Some people don't have your conviction. Some people do not even have your heart or your faith. So that is why I had an attitude when I was hearing black ministers talk about just being faithful and still come to church during a pandemic. I'm like, dude, everybody ain't got Smith Wigglesworth faith. And everybody hasn't got your faith, because the Bible says that God has given every man a measure of faith. So if God has given every man a measure of faith, then we need to get to the place where we got to build people's faith. We need to get to the place, man, where we exercise our faith. Seriously. I want you guys to understand and realize that there is a difference between church and retail business. The one thing that you have to look at is the fact that when these pastors were protesting at the Capitals to have their church buildings open, they were saying they were just as essential, just like Target. And they were also saying that if people can stand in Target, then they can come to church. But the one thing that you're starting to see now, that even with the openings, people are still catching coronavirus because more testing is done. You're starting to see that more people are testing positive. But yet, here we are. Let's open up. Let's do this. Let's do that. And people are still getting sick. And people are still catching it. Unfortunately, some people are dying from it. And now you're starting to see a new group and class of people who haven't caught it before. Now you're looking at the people 35 and under. When before it was 49 and up. So we have to ask ourselves, Lord, what are we doing wrong? Because at this point right now, you as a believer, you as my listener, you got to make up in your mind that I'm going to stay safe. I'm going to stand on the side of right. And I am not going to allow anybody to dictate to me what my faith is, what it represents. Because I'm going to tell you, everybody has to make their calling and election sure. God has dealt to every man the measure of faith. And I'm getting sick and tired of seeing these preachers talk about other ministers, talk about people not having faith because they don't want to stand on the side of you, even though there's a pandemic out here. And I get it. But you can't sit up here and call yourself a man of faith and condemn. And that's black and white ministers. The difference between church and retail business is this. There's constant movement in retail business. Constant movement. We can't say that about church. But yet, the same pastors that protest on the Capitol steps are not saying anything about this whole racist system, some of them are quiet. Some of them have spoke up. Some of them don't have no choice but to speak up because money is at stake. And I'm here to tell you, listeners, when it comes to black and white celebrities, it's about protecting the brand. So they may not even be about Black Lives Matter. Their money matters. And you got to understand this, man. You got to understand that there is a conglomerate, that there is a boule, a black boule, as well as a white boule of people that finance things of this magnitude. There are those who can finance companies and wars, finance banks, make up in their minds that they're going to get out here. Yeah, let's start this so we can further move our agenda. And there are boules who are sent and used by the spirit of racism and white supremacy that are called to destroy, disrupt, and put a stumbling block in the way of black people and their success and their progression. Because my question is, how is it we can have a Thurgood Marshall and then we get a Clarence Thomas? And then the crazy part about it is that when it comes to affirmative action, that thing got torn apart, and it was mainly because of Clarence Thomas. These are things that could have benefited black people. Why is it now that, we have the 64 Civil Rights Bill, we have the 68 Civil Rights Bill, and the crazy part about it is that even in the midst of having those things, now we have gotten to the place that we have to talk about what's legal and illegal in policing. The fact that there is no other occupation like police and prison guards and probation officers or anything in law enforcement that can justify a chokehold, that can justify shooting a person. We have to ask ourselves, man, what's going on with policing? We can't find better ways to subdue people. We can't find better ways to control a person. So in other words, let's shoot. Let's put them in a chokehold. And then at the end of the day, we make it legal because I told you before, man, the stuff that was in the past has now become policy of the present. And now we're starting to see that the policy does not work. The crime bill, when it came, with blacks, that didn't work. The 3 strikes law, definitely for blacks. When it came to crack, war on crack, blacks. But yet the crazy part about it is that it only applies, the only concern that comes is when it hits the white world. You got to look at the fact that black people were in jail doing rehab in jail because of crack possession, crack selling, and crack using. But yet when this whole opioid epidemic came about, let's find a way that we can medicate these people. It's a shame, because now it's nothing but addiction. But the crazy part about it is that they ain't getting no jail time. Seriously. Not like the black people did. And the only thing that you got to look at is that the conviction rate. And if you look at that, then you see that the time for powder cocaine was definitely different than crack cocaine. Look at the sentences. Harsher for crack, lenient for powder. Even now, look at marijuana. Now marijuana is legal. But what about all the time where you took and arrested people for having ounces of marijuana on them? And it's crazy how it is now that you have people that were selling it now in jail, and now you got white people selling weed legally. Same thing when it came to alcohol. It was illegal. You had moonshiners, and now some of these people have made millions off of liquor and even stole black people's inventions and recipes. But I'm telling you right now, we have got to wake up. There are some of these people, some of these black celebrities do not have your back. There is a conglomerate, and I believe that there is a boule of black people that are sent and used by white supremacists because of because of their protection of white privilege, and because they've been given black privilege. They have been assimilated, and they are strategically used to undermine, to destroy, and to push back against anything that's going to progress us as a community and as a whole. Yeah, I said it. And I know it might be some people out here angry. I get it. Sorry. Matter of fact, I take that back. Not sorry. So I want you to know right now, man, you got to look at it. Let's look at what is a boule. Let's see. Who created the boule? And I'm looking at this off of Wikipedia. And so you got to understand that there were boules in Greek. And you also have to understand that this is way back. And what they did way back then, it was, the rule was we always have a king, but then we always have people who are supporting. We have to have a support system. And so you got to understand, when I was talking about the five-fold of racism, you also have to understand that there is a boule, whether that boule is white or whether that boule is black or even mixed, that there is a boule that is used by the spirit of racism and white supremacy to undermine the progression of black people. So let's go. Thus in Athens in 594 BC, Solon did not abolish the Areopagite council, but is said to have created a boule of 400 to guide the work or assembly or ecclesia. And so you have to understand is that boule means noblemen, a group of noblemen. And so that's where you get these black fraternities from. So you have to look at the fact that there are blacks in politics, that there are blacks in medicine, that there are blacks, all over the spectrum. But just because they're black doesn't mean that they are for the plight of black people. And I've told you this before, even when it comes to politics, I'm not going to vote for you because you're black. Because there are black Republicans who support President Trump, and then they want to tell you about the history of the Democratic Party, but yet totally have you ignore everything that the Republican Party has done. Let's talk about trickle-down economics. Let's talk about the Reagan years. Let's talk about the Bush years. Let's talk about both Bush years, presidencies rather. Let's talk about that. But, the thing is that they want to tell you the history of the Republican Party and how they were abolitionists in that party. But my question is that, look at where we are right now. Because I'm telling you, yeah, there's bad history on both party sides. But where are we right now? Because I look at it like this. There is messed up stuff on the Democratic side as well as the Republican side. And all of it was about just progressing the nation. And they did it by any means necessary. If it means I have to have an Emancipation Proclamation, I don't give a damn about the blacks. I give a damn about this nation falling apart. And I'm going to use whatever tool is necessary to keep that thing going. So yeah, I will give you that. And then you had the promise of 40 acres and a mule for those who fought in the war, who were free, and yet after Lincoln got assassinated, will not even honor the contract. Some people actually went back into slavery. And then you got to look at Jim Crow. And then you got to look at it all the way up until now. How have black people progressed? You want to talk about Obama? We have a long way to go. Because like I said, man, if you are down south, you live down south, you know it. You see it. You know how to function in it because you're so used to it. And sometimes you can be in an atmosphere so long that after a while, it doesn't even bother you. Seriously, that's how racism is. It gets to the point where it oppresses both people, whites and blacks, and people of color, that now it's like, in certain scenarios, it's almost like, man, there it is. And then sometimes it takes something real extreme for us to wake up and know that, hey, we need to do something about this. And I'm getting sick and tired of us looking at leading black and thinking that they're black leaders, because there is a definite definition between a leading black and a black leader. A leading black may be a Kanye West, but he is not a black leader. A leading black may be a Jay-Z, but they are not black leaders. A black leader to me is like Al Sharpton. A black leader to me is like Reverend Dr. William Barber. And there are those, who are used by media, and then they put these black faces on TV to shut down and tear down the black community. And I'm here to tell you right now, watch out for women like Candace Owens. Watch out for those two light-skinned dudes. I forget their names. But I'm going to tell you, they are not black leaders. They may be leading black because they are paid by the political machine to tear down. And that's the God knows truth. So you have to make up in your mind who your leaders are and who you're going to follow. I look at it like this. Look at the fruit of a person's life. Because everybody can say something good for the moment and then turn around and be the opposite of what they say and what they believe. So you got to look at a person's fruit. You got to look at their life. Do their words match their actions? Because I'm going to tell you, man, if you saying, oh, man, yo, these black celebrities, they this, they that, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, I'm going to tell you, man, yo, some of them, no, they're not. Some of them have self-hate. Some of them are to the place where their whole thing is about destroying black people. Because of the self-hate that they have. Because of the trauma that they have growing up. And they will sit up here and say black people are lazy, black people are this, and I came over to this country and I have this and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and I've been given this type of opportunity and I have that opportunity and I made myself. But they came from another country. They couldn't do that shit where they came from. They had to come over here. And yet want to talk about the black people over here. You don't know the history over here. Why don't you take that same damn zeal and go back and change where you came from? Whether it be Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, whatever. I don't care. But you guys, you got to watch out for people that talk like that. You got to watch out for these fucking former football stars that talk like that. And NBA stars that talk like that. That sit up here and want to say what black people need to do. And they always give the narrative that we are broken. We are not broken. The crazy part about it is that they have gotten a certain level of class and now they were like, yo, forget all of y'all. I'm telling you, man, why is it that we get to a certain level and we move up out the hood and we forget about the hood and then we want to have the nerve to want to talk about it? I'm telling you, man, we got to change the story of our neighborhoods. Because when you hear notions, when you hear, stories, oh, you got to do this to get out. Get out of what? You make it sound like that my neighborhood and the people there are broken. It's a prison yard. But this is what we have told people. That in order to get out of the ghetto, in order for us to make it, that we have to do certain things. I'm going to tell you, man, some of these people, they are only satisfied when you are entertaining them. You can't speak your truth to power. They want you to entertain. Shake your ass, girl. Sing that song, girl. Run that ball, nigga. Run that ball, nigga. Come on, get my points. Run that ball. Shoot the shot. They're okay with us as long as we're entertaining them. They're okay with us as long as we make them laugh. But if you saw Dave Chappelle's last special, that special wasn't that funny. That was his frustration coming out and his realness coming out. Because the crazy part you got to understand is that, man, for how long are we going to take this mess? You know it's a problem, but yet don't want to fix it. And the crazy part about it is that it takes people rioting and looting to get justice. And then you have the nerve to want to talk about we need to be peaceful when everything about this country has been blood and violence. Everything about this country. Blood and violence and looting and shooting. What the hell do you think the Boston Tea Party was? What do you think the Civil War was? And this is on American soil. What do you think the raping and the rampage of the Indians were? What do you think that slavery was? Chattel slavery. And then you want to have the nerve to have black ministers want to talk about reconciliation. There will never be reconciliation. And some of these black preachers need to shut the hell up because they know it. They know there will never be reconciliation because to reconcile means there must be an equal. When there is not being taught in church of taking the label off and seeing a person's humanity, how can you be reconciled with a person you don't even deem as your equal or human? And so you have to look at that. You have to look at it. Seriously. So why, I'm going to just give you this. Why does a white person need to reconcile with black people and people of color when they don't even feel like that the black people don't measure up? They have been told all of their life that they are better. Everything throughout society has always made the black man less than and inferior. And there's been a fear behind that. And if you look at what I told you about the conduit of the White House, why did they play that movie? To reinforce the fear. To reinforce the notion that the black man is a beast. He needs to be controlled. He needs to be eradicated. And the only people that are going to do it is the Klan and white supremacy. And that movie was played at the White House, and people, white people especially, called it a religious experience. And the White House is a conduit to the nation. But yet the crazy part is that there is a new movie coming out, or a series coming out, called Cracker, that gives a reverse role, that gives a reverse narrative, that puts white people in slavery. And all the atrocities that was done to black people is now done to them, and the black people are now the slave masters. And people are protesting that just like they did Nate Parker's movie, The Birth of a Nation. And you got to understand that when it comes to changing the narrative of the oppressed, people get upset because they don't want to see it. It's like, I don't want to see that shit. All they talking about is raping our daughters. But yet it was okay that the slave master who talked about having a pure race raped the female slave. You got to look at history, even medical history, how they practiced on black people. When you look at the father of gynecology and how he practiced on black women. And how you look at how they tested us with syphilis, the Tuskegee experiment. I'm telling you. This nation has been built on the backs and the blood of other races for years, for decades. And it is by white people that they have made that progression. And to sit up here and to say that, you know, these people are exceptional, they're black. I'm like, man, please, why do black people have to be exceptional? Why can't we just be? Because white people just are. They don't have the burden. They don't have to be conscious of color. They just are. They don't have to get to a level of success. They don't have to strive for it. They don't have to hear that conversation. You need to be twice as good. Matter of fact, they walk out here entitled thinking that the world is theirs. And then get mad and say, hey, that nigga didn't deserve that job, I did. How? When they got more qualifications. That is the language. These are some of the things that you hear. I deserve it. I'm telling you, man, when you're dealing with white supremacy, you got to see the entitlement. And then you also have to look at the fact of the history when it comes to feeling like they are superior. You definitely feel like you're superior when you can take a black man, regardless of what the laws of the land say, and lynch him, and then take pictures and make postcards of that shit. Seriously, the postcards were sold for 25 cents. So in other words, you're financing and making money off of the murder of a black man. And then you put it in the paper for thousands of people to come out. And then you cut pieces off of that man. Fingers, toes, genitals, ears, whatever. Or you burn the body and take a picture. I'm telling you, man, you got to see it for what it is. And that's what I mean when I say, when they take away your humanity, it also takes away their conscience towards you. Because my question is, how is it that you can call yourself a loving Christian and ignore the cries? How is it that you can call yourself a loving Christian and still be racist and quote the scripture John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever should believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life? Africa is a part of the world. Black people are a part of the world. And so don't you think that God died for them? Don't you think that even though the Bible says that we're supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves, when you don't consider me an equal, when you don't consider me a neighbor, you can treat me any old kind of way. Because in your eyes, the only neighbor that you have are white. Blacks are considered property. They're like dogs. They're like chickens. And no people, they didn't even think twice when it came to killing black people at times. Man, please, they would kill a black person like they wringing a chicken's neck. No conscience behind it, because the label of nigger was placed upon. And this is why I say that we got to remove the burden and destroy the yoke of the label. And that goes for every label. Nigger, inferior, mongrel, ape, monkey, all the labels. We got to get rid of all the labels. And I'm going to tell you right now, man, that there are some celebrities, they want to keep those things intact, black and white. Because their whole thing is, it's not about the black community. They've been disconnected for years. It's about them making money at this moment, because they know that pretty soon they're going to be irrelevant. They're going to be, obsolete. And that's why you can have Diamond and Silk. That's why you can have, Omarosa. And now she didn't, turned around. But yet, I'm like, when you was there, you could have very well helped us. But yet, you heard some things, you saw some things, and now they kicked you to the curb. Now you expecting us to buy a book. Wish you luck on that. And it'll be the same with Diamond and Silk. And it'll be the same with all of those black pastors. And definitely the same with Candace Owens. She'll get an epiphany. But I'm going to tell you this, that God is revealing who is going to be leading from the future. And when you see the quietness from some of the most vocal black preachers out here, when you see their silence, you know that they are a part of the game. Especially when you hear the term, I have a word, but God hasn't, given me a release to tell you what it is. But yet, want to talk about the Democratic Party. And you see this not only with black pastors and preachers and prophets, you see it with white ones as well. Because I heard a white guy. And his prophecy fell to the ground. Seriously. Fell to the ground. He up here said that it was going to be a female candidate who was going to get the Democratic Party, and began to talk about Hillary Clinton and how she was going to go to them and saying this is what you need to win and da 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 da. But yet, before all that said, I have a word, but I can't give it all. But yet, want to talk about the Democratic Party and name Hillary Clinton. I'm telling you, man, you better watch out for these so-called prophets. Seriously. Seriously. You better watch out. You better watch who you listen to. I'm telling you, because right now, if you don't, you're going to be taken away. You're going to be taken away. And the one thing you're starting to realize that God is revealing in this time, who has the heart of God. You're seeing people's true motives being revealed, their heart being revealed. When you can take and protest on the Capitol steps and not even say anything when it comes to my community. The only thing you say is they shouldn't be burning and looting, but yet you quiet on George Floyd, you quiet on Breonna Taylor, you're quiet on Ahmaud Arbery, and you're more concerned about saving souls instead of saving lives. So my question is, listeners, is there a difference between a black leader and a leading black? Yes, there is. And you need to see it for what it is. Because I'm going to tell you, even though they might have black skin, that don't mean that they have your best interests at heart. And I meant what I said. If these so-called spiritual fathers, black and white, are not standing up for your community, but want you to give your tithes and offerings, nah, you leave that place. You take your money, you take your family and roll. You give some other place. And when I came out and I spoke up and said black ties matters, I got attacked by 2 black ministers. Seriously. They up here assumed that I wasn't. I'm telling people not to give. I wasn't saying not to give. I'm like, yo, you need to know where your money's going at. But how is it that some of these ministers can stay quiet? I'm like, man, look, prophetic, apostolic, I don't care what your denomination is. If you can stay quiet during these times, there's something wrong. And that's the God knows truth. But like I told you, people have their clarity. And don't condemn yourself in what you allow. If you allow yourself to be quiet, stay in that peace. Because at least you have clarity. If you're going to be vocal like myself, I'm clear. This is my position. And I'm blessed in it. So I want you guys to understand and know that there is definitely a difference between black leaders and leading blacks. And you got to watch out for this black boule and white boule who are part of the system of racism. And their whole goal in life is to use their privilege and influence and money and connections to protect and insulate white privilege, white denial, white rage, and white fragility. So on that note, listeners, I want you to be blessed. And the one thing I want you to realize is that this coronavirus ain't going nowhere. I'm going to tell you that right now. You have some people out here who think that it's gone, but it's not. And so on that note, I want to leave you with this little clip that I got off of D Springs. And this is what corona is. And this is what some people think that racism is. But I'm here to tell you is that I get the other side of the argument about sin being in the world and people need to be saved. But I realize is that if it's in the world, does it have to be in the church? I say no, because Christ is not coming back for a twisted bride like this. But I want you guys to understand and know that you're going to have to deal with this coronavirus because this is now our new normal. And I want to leave you with this.
You can't get rid of me, bitch. I'm not going nowhere. I'm not going
Walk in the truth that makes you free every day. Follow Brother Leon on all social media outlets.
You can't get rid of me, bitch.